Greetings, Deep Dive Podcast listeners. This is your boy, Sam Oram, coming at you with another episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. Man, today is my birthday. Y'all wish me a happy birthday. It shows how committed I am to you guys in this podcast because today is the birthday. So we're going to keep this podcast short tonight because, got some birthday activities to take care of. But anyway, welcome all of you to the Deep Dive Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. As usual, we have people who are logging in all over the world. So I do appreciate that more than you know. I would like for people to continue though to support the podcast. Go to the website, the deepdivepodcast.live, and subscribe, download, share, listen to some of the previous episodes. It's a variety of topics and guests, and a whole lot of empowerment there at the deepdivepodcast.live. So go and check it out. All of you who are tuning in for the very first time, thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast. Welcome. We are here to empower you. We are here to entertain you. We are here to help you become a better version of who you are. So thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. As I said, I'm going to keep this podcast very short, but the topic is very important. A lot of times what I like to do during the week is just listen to what people are saying, whether it's, whether I'm physically in their presence or listening to messages or emails, voicemails, whatever it may be, on our podcast platforms, just to kind of get an idea of what's on the mindset of people. And I think one of the things that's really, really becoming more and more of an issue with a lot of people is mental health. And we don't take that lightly. I think a lot of times, people have taken mental health lightly and they're not really giving it the attention that they should have, kind of overlooked it, but it's becoming more and more of an issue where people are forced to address the challenges that we have throughout the world in terms of mental health. And one of the questions that I get a lot, I'm also an executive coach for those who may not know. So one of the questions that I get a lot when I'm coaching people is I always get this question of why me? Why me? Why is this happening to me? Or why does this happen? Or all of these type thing. It is the why me question that I get a lot. And so I wanted to kind of address that a little bit tonight, just to give you an idea of, first of all, what that means and how it affects you mentally in terms of your mental health. We got to begin by shifting, first of all, our mindsets and not necessarily asking the question, why me all the time, but why me has to be one of the because why me has to be one of the one of the least productive questions that you can ask yourself. Why me? I've said in the past that questions control the conversation, but also your mind, if you've asked a question, physically has to seek an answer, right? And so when you ask yourself certain questions, your mind start to look for an answer. And if you're asking the wrong questions, you may get the wrong, answers, or it may perpetuate a situation that you don't want to emphasize. For example, someone may say, keep asking the question, well, why am I so fat? Why am I so fat? Why am I so fat? As opposed to asking the question, what do I need to do to lose weight? See, in both instances, your mind has to seek an answer, but the path to those answers are drastically different. You keep asking yourself, why am I so fat? Why am I so fat? The answers that you'll get, if you get an answer at all, is going to continually perpetuate the challenges that you had in terms of being overweight or what you perceive to be overweight. But then if you ask yourself, well, what do I need to do to lose weight? Then your mind is going to seek those answers. So you got to be careful and understanding that, that's to ask yourself why me is a very non-productive type of question. So people say, well, why is that non-productive? Why wouldn't I ask myself that? Well, funny you would ask. I want to share with you just a few things that will hopefully clarify why that is a non-productive type question. So, asking why, first of all, it places the focus and emphasis on you. That's the first thing it does, because you're saying, why me, right? So that's putting the focus That's putting the emphasis on you. You've got to get over the thought that the world, the universe, the household, everything revolves around you or revolves around us. Not saying that in a negative, from a negative standpoint, but just we kind of have to get out of that mindset because we're a part of a bigger thing. That is the universe. That is the spiritual universe. That is the physical universe. We're part of something bigger, but we can't think that the universe or the world revolves around us. We just have to understand that we're a part of it because it doesn't revolve around us. We're just one more person on a rock that's circling the sun, if that makes sense. So that's going to help us in terms of how we approach. You remember last week we talked about the psychology of winning and how you create these habits. If you didn't hear that episode, you want to go back to the website and take a listen to it, or go to YouTube and take a look at it. But, when you ask why me, you're just kind of looking at yourself. We're looking at ourselves. We're putting a spotlight on ourselves. There's so many reasons something can happen to us, whether it's a good thing, a bad thing, bad luck, whatever you want to call it, whether it's a curse, but bad things just happen. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you. So you want to take that pressure off of yourself in a lot of instances and saying, asking that question because it's going to focus on you. It's going to put that spotlight on you. And like I said, sometimes you can make a situation worse just by seeking an answer that in a lot of cases you may not even want. Also asking that question, why me? It doesn't offer any solutions. You'll just wallow in that question, why me? There are no solutions to the question, why me? Think about when you ask yourself questions, why me? Imagine that sometime if you even got an answer, would it really make a difference? Even if you got an answer? See, that why me is what I call self-torture. That why me question is what I call self-torture. And so even if you got an answer, will it really make a difference? Is it worth it for you to go through self-torture to get an answer that may be irrelevant in the first place? I know a lot of times we're thinking subconsciously or even consciously that, well, if I find out why, then I can do this or I can do that or I can change this or change that. That's where it goes back to asking the question, not why me, but what do I need to do to solve X, Y, or Z? Not why me. That's a non-productive question, as I said. So, and sometimes, okay, now you got the answer. What? Would it make it any better? I really doubt that it would make any improvement whatsoever, and you probably get an answer. You probably wouldn't even like what the answer would be. So instead of asking yourself why, just continue to ask better questions of yourself. You can also ask yourself, what can I do to avoid this situation next time? How can I avoid this situation? If you get in let's say, a spat with your significant other, your wife, your husband, whatever it may be, right? Maybe ask yourself, what could I do to avoid this situation the next time? Not putting the blame on you or him or her, whatever, but just what could you do to avoid this situation next time? Or is the person, let's just say there's road rage. Is the person that's cutting you off or giving you the finger in terms of road rage, are they going through a rough time in their life? I'm a little bit. That may not be the best example for me because if you give me the finger, I don't care what you're going through. I'm gonna give you one back. Oh Lord, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder about myself. But anyway, just understanding that that particular question is non-productive, and you want to continuously ask yourself questions that's going to keep you in that positive mindset. Again, we talked about this last week, the winning, a psychology of winning, keeping that positive mindset. Looking for solutions, which again is based on you asking those questions, the proper question. Looking for solutions is better than focusing in on the narrow scope of the problem. Again, I use this question, why am I so fat? That's the narrow scope of that problem, as opposed to what do I need to do to lose weight? That offers solutions. Okay. Also asking why me, it kind of perpetuates a victim's mentality, like the world or the universe is picking on you. And it's not. It's not. There are just certain things that we're incapable of changing, no matter how great we think we are, that we're just incapable of changing. I remember I think I had a colonoscopy a couple years ago, whatever it was. And, going under the anesthesia, I remember that I said to myself prior to getting the anesthesia, I said, okay, everybody, I've seen it administered. I've been in situations to see it administered, and I'm like, you know what? Most people don't get to, if you count backwards from 10, most people don't get to 5. They just don't. I said, you know what? I'm gonna when they give me this anesthesia, I'm gonna hold out. I'm gonna get all the way to number one. I'm gonna hold out. I'm gonna make sure I don't go under as quickly as everybody else. So they gave me the anesthesia and they said, count back from 10. I remember saying 10. I remember saying 9. I remember saying 8. Next thing I remember, they were telling me I'm done with the procedure. They were telling me they're done with the procedure. As much as I thought I was going to defy the power of anesthesia, I only remember 10, 9, and 8. I didn't get any further than that. And I'm thinking, and I'm a person that, I like to focus on the strength of the mind and how I can control my environment and create my future and all these things I talk about. Like my good friend Ocho Cinco say, child, please. I didn't get past 8 and I was out. That means I couldn't control that, right? I couldn't control that at all. So there are things and circumstances in your life that you just cannot control. So you don't want to create this victim's mentality because it's going to give you a poor mental health state, a poor mental health situation. And you don't want to be in that space. You don't want to be in that space at all. So you don't want to give that victim's mentality to who you are. Society has begun to create a mindset that everyone is a victim. It's like society is creating an environment where, regardless of what happened, you're the victim. I lost an election, but I didn't lose an election. Or my wife left me, or my husband left me, but I didn't do this. They did that. We have created an environment of everyone being a victim. No one is taking responsibility. They don't take responsibility for anything anymore. And everything is like it's not your fault. Part of power is accepting responsibility. Let me say that again. Part of power is accepting responsibility. Part of power is putting yourself in a position where it's like even if you don't believe that it's your fault, to take the responsibility, it defuses the situation and it gives you a level of power, right? You're in a debate or an argument with someone, anyone, and they say, you know what? You're absolutely right. Man, sometimes it actually makes the other person you're debating with or arguing with, it makes them even more upset because they want to argue, right? But you're just like, you know what? You're right. I agree. Even if you don't believe it, you're right. I agree. I'm wrong. You take that responsibility, man. There's so much power in that. But the key is, in terms of that why me question, is not to have that victim's mentality. So much of that is going on right now in society that you don't want to be in that space whatsoever. So just keep your power or gain your power just by, not being a victim. It is what it is, taking responsibility. You take any strength you have and you give it away when you play the victim. You don't want to be in that space at all. As I said, you willingly put yourself in a position of weakness. And that's not, when you're talking about mental health, the last thing you want to do is have a weak mindset. You want to keep that strength and that power and do the things that you can absolutely do. Some people are so argumentative. They just, it doesn't matter what this situation is. They have to defend the situation or they have to argue about the situation, and they can't even hear the right answer because they're too busy trying to defend their standpoint or their point of view. When I get in a situation like that, I just kind of shut down. I just let them talk. Go ahead, say whatever you want to say because I'm not going to debate you. Two things you can never debate. That's a fact or an opinion. You cannot debate those things. So when somebody starts to offer their opinion, there's nothing for me to say. It is their opinion. Doesn't make it true. It's just their opinion. And then facts cannot be debated. So I don't even get into that space. That maintains the power in my mindset where I'm, it just is what it is, right? So you want to make sure you don't have that mentality. Honestly, you're not weak just by saying you're right. That doesn't mean you're weak. It's actually, it means you're not going to play that victim game. You're not going to get into any kind of mental debate where, there are no winners. So just don't even worry about that. Also, when you start to ask yourself, why me? It really can lead, and I want you to hear this, it can lead to a feeling of depression. It can lead to a feeling of depression. And with mental health being such an issue in this country and even around the globe, for those of you who are listening internationally, mental health and depression is so prevalent right now that we need to do everything we possibly can to not put ourselves in a situation of depression. So asking why me, that's a igniter in terms of putting you into a spirit of depression. You don't want to get that. You don't want to get into that situation. If you're asking why me, then that again, that brings out that whole victim's mentality. You start to feel bad about yourself. You may even feel less about yourself. It can also, just continue to create or recreate things that have happened in the past, right? And you're like, look, here we go again. Why me? Why this happened to me last year? This happened to me before. Why me again? Why me again? Why is this happening? You start to get into that sense and that spirit of depression. You don't want to be in that space at all. When you're feeling powerless, when you're feeling weak, when you have a hard time feeling good about yourself, a lot of times it's based on the questions that you're asking yourself. And so, again, ask those empowering questions that will bring up your spirit, bring up your mood, bring up your physiology. Like you may say something to the effect, yeah, this did happen, but this is what I'm about to do about it. And I'm gonna attack it. I'm gonna attack my lack before my lack attacks me. I'm gonna go after this thing right now. So it's a totally different kind of mindset than why me. And then you sit there and you wallow in that misery of why me, as opposed to saying, you know what, okay, this did happen. This was the case. Now, how am I gonna deal with it? Depression can easily come when you just have no control. And when you have no control is when you keep asking yourself these limiting questions like why me? So some things that you can start to do. Remember, we've said in the past that a mind cannot occupy two thoughts at a time. It is impossible for the mind to occupy two thoughts at a time. So when you start to have these feelings of why me, then you want to be in a situation where you change your thoughts immediately, whatever that means. You change your thoughts immediately. You can control your mind. I've said this before, and some people they laugh at me, but it's my reality. But because I have so many things on my mind all the time. I mean, countless things with running multiple companies, with the podcast, the book, the radio station, 8 companies, sitting on board. I mean, I have a plethora of things. Not to even mention, I never talk about my personal life because it's personal, but not to mention my personal things that's always on my mind. My mind is constantly flooded with things, and it's flooded with things that to the so much to the degree that if I don't control my mindset in a certain way, I can't sleep. I can't even sleep because all of these things are continuously flooding my mind. I do business in other parts of the world, so the phone would never stop ringing. I get international calls all through the night. I actually have to have the ringer off on my phone. Typically, the ringer is off on my phone, morning, noon, and night for a lot of times. It's because there's no break in terms of the mental challenges that I may have. And I'm not saying bad things. I mean, just things you just have to think about to operate at the highest level. So when I get ready to go to sleep, I have to have my iPad or notebook or something. Um, and I have to have something playing that I can listen to that will distract me from all of the rigors of the daily thoughts. I have to do that. Now, people will tell me all the time, well, you shouldn't go to bed, listening to TV, all of this stuff, or, you shouldn't listen to the news, or you shouldn't do all of these things. And, that's your life, your story. I don't live by your life. My life means if I don't listen to something when I'm trying to go to sleep, I would never go to sleep. Now, I don't listen to nothing crazy, but what I do listen to, y'all gonna laugh, but go ahead and get ready to laugh. I'll listen to something like Leave It to Beaver or Andy Griffith. Something like that I've seen a million times, but I know every word that's about to come out of their mouths, right? Um, but it distracts me from having to think about all the stuff that I think about every single moment of every single day. And when I do that, usually in 3 or 4 minutes, I'm out. I'm out like a light. But if there's nothing there and I'm left to just my thoughts, then I'm thinking about, okay, what do I have to do the next day? How can I make this better? How can I help this person? How can I make the company better? How can I do this? How can I do this? That kind of thing. But because the mind, and here's the point I'm trying to make, because the mind cannot occupy two thoughts at a time, while I'm listening to something that's as irrelevant as the Andy Griffith Show, I easily fall off to sleep. If I'm having to strategize, I'll be up all night with those thoughts. So you can control your depression. You can control your feeling. You can control that woe is me, why me question by occupying your mind with a different thought, whether that's reading something positive, whether that's doing something or having a different type conversation. A lot of people listen to music. When you're listening to music, you cannot, impossible to have any other thoughts because you're listening to music. Some people meditate, some people do yoga, whatever your deal is in terms of increasing your mindset or changing your thoughts. Do those things so you don't wallow in the misery of why me. You don't wallow in the misery of woe is me. You don't wallow in the negativity of why things may be the way they are, thinking it has something to do with you, which when typically it doesn't. It is just life. Okay. It is absolutely just life. As great as you are, as great as we are, we don't make the universe, things that revolve around us as it relates to the universe, spiritually or physically. It just doesn't. What you're trying to do is just like I did, try to defy anesthesia, and it's just not going to happen. So put yourself in the best possible position to win, and that is creating a positive mindset just by controlling your thoughts and not wallowing in the misery of why me. So I hope this short podcast helped. I hope you got some tidbits from this podcast. I mean, as short as it may have been, the information is powerful. If you can digest this particular information, if you understand the value of what we're talking about when we say don't get into that why me, woe is me mode, then I think you're going to enrich the quality of your life exponentially moving forward as we close out 2022 and go into 2023. All right. So again, guys, thank you so much for all of your support. Again, I know it sounds redundant, but I really would be remiss if I did not acknowledge you every single week. Please continue to go to all of the podcast platforms. I think now I'm on like 22 or 23 different podcast platforms, including Spotify, Google, Apple, Amazon, iTunes, what is not iTunes, iHeart, all of them. All of your podcast platforms were there. Also on the Deep Dive Podcast Live, and certainly most of you are tuning in to One Voice Radio. Make sure you listen to what we're doing, support what we're doing. We're going to continue to bring you the best that we possibly can so we can help you become a better version of you. With that, thank you once again for joining me on this episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. God bless you, and I'll see you on the beaches of the world.